I have a lot of scrap wood and I need a workbench. So in this video, I'm going to try to use up some of my pine wood scraps and make a workbench. Some of this wood is red pine, some is yellow pine, and some is green treated pine, but it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to use whatever I got. I started by cutting a bunch of 1" by 1" strips that I can glue up into bigger blocks to make my pieces. And now I'm just squaring up the ends of all the 1" strips so that they glue up together tight. Next, I use the 1" strips to glue up 4 blocks to make the legs of the bench. And once the glue dried, I could square up my leg pieces. I also thought it would look cool to put a radius on the legs, and I tried using a bandsaw to do that, but my bandsaw is awful. I probably couldn't even cut off my finger if I tried with that, so I used a Sawzall instead, and that left a rougher finish, but I just had to use a spindle sander to clean it up when I was done. Last thing I had to do for the legs was cut the joinery, which I'm not going to go into much detail now, but you'll see how that all fits together later. Next, I used some more of the 1" strips I cut in the beginning to glue up 2 more blocks to make the end stretchers. The process for making the rest of these parts for the build is more or less the same, so again, I just squared up all the end stretcher pieces, shaped the pieces a little bit, and then cut the joinery. Next, I made what I guess you might call the feet of the workbench. I don't know, you'll see when I put everything together. Last thing I needed to make to finish the frame was the length stretchers, and I didn't have to cut any joinery for those. And now with all the pieces done, you can see how the frame of the workbench fits together. Kind of as an afterthought, I decided to put in a bottom shelf, so I used my router to cut a rabbet in the stretchers, and then cut some of my longer 1-inch strips to 17 inches to make the bottom shelf. I put a heavy round over on the entire frame, and then finished everything with a couple coats of shellac. Now with the frame done, I started making the top of the workbench, and for the top I used some of my wider scraps and cut them into 2.5-inch strips. And then I squared up the ends of all the strips and planed them down flat. Now I had enough pieces to make the top, so I glued up the pieces into 2 sections so I could run them through the planer. Once I had both pieces flat, I could join them together to their final size. I screwed the bench top onto the frame and then drilled all the holes I needed for the bench dogs and some holes to mount on the vise. I made the moxon vise for this bench as well, and I'm not going to go into how I made it, but I have a video on making a similar one if you want to see that. I did some final shaping and sanding, and also gave the top a heavy round over to match the frame before finishing everything with shellac.